And hello, this is the third seminar we're doing here online at Dayton Nursery in Norton. And the reason being, of course, is because of the COVID virus. So unfortunately, we can't have them in person. But anyway, I'm going to talk to you today about hedges and screens. And one of the things that hedges and screens have many purposes. Well, one of them might be a noise barrier, like to block street noise or even noisy neighbors. It may be to get you more privacy along the property line, or it may even be able to give you a windbreak, especially which would be important on open properties, especially out near farm country. But whatever the reason, hedges do serve their purpose. Now, there's all kinds of different hedges, and some grow very tall, like pines and spruce on a huge property. They would grow 30, 40, 50, 60 feet and more over time. And typically for those hedges, Norway spruce and white pine are the best ones to choose because of the fast growth and the fact they're not bothered by a lot of diseases or insects. The other type of hedge would be arborvitae. Now that's typically used where there isn't a lot of room near the property line. And where that space is not available, they are ideal. They're planted 3 foot on center, and they grow to
We received even more shipments this week of the very popular Emerald Green and North Pole Arborvitae.
Emerald Green is the most popular variety, but there's also Niagara, which grows a little bit taller, a little bit wider. And there's also Techne that only grows to about 10 feet. Next for an evergreen hedge would be the Green Giant Western Red Cedar. But not only that is the most popular, but there are other varieties like Spring Grove, Can, which grows to about 10 feet, and Sugar and Spice, which also grows to about 8 to 10 feet. Now, Green Giant can typically grow in about 20 years, can grow to about 40 feet. It grows fast and furious. It is not straggly. Just the top is a little bit lanky, but it fills in as it goes along. But 3 feet a year is a lot of growth, and it can give you coverage quickly. It's economical to use because even though it's a little bit more expensive, it grows about 5 foot on, or is planted rather, about 5 foot on center. Green Giant grows in ordinary well-drained soil in part sun or in full sun. So it really doesn't matter. The other thing about it is it will take and tolerate somewhat wet soils where other things may not. Other hedges that could be used are deciduous. Lilacs would be one thing, which give you a wonderful fragrance. You can use Taxus hicksii, which grows slower, but Taxus hicksii grow columnar and upright and can get up to about 20 feet over time. Flowering plum bush, they call it the sand cherry, and there's fragrant viburnum like Myrisii, Shasta, and those types of things that would work well as a hedge. And again, typically planted on about 5 foot on center to get that full hedge full completely on the bottom. All these things are easy to grow. Some of them, like the viburnums, might require trimming once a year, but it's sure a lot better than using something like Forsythia, which can grow wild, that would need trimming at least once a year. So that would be the one thing to keep in mind. Now, as far as hedges are concerned and what to choose, it all depends on your space. It depends on your desires and how tall you would like it to be. Now, as far as the 40 feet going up with a Green Giant Western Red Cedar after 20 years, it will even go up faster than that. But as far as it goes, it provides a wonderful sound break and a windbreak that fits most customers' needs. However, it does get to about 15 feet wide over time. So in that case, you would choose the Arborvitae family, and that would work much better for you. One of the problems with Arborvitae, though, they are subject to an insect called bagworm, which moved up from the south about 20 years ago and never used to be seen above Route 70 that goes through Columbus, but it's up here now. And if you don't know what you're doing or looking for, they can eat them up, the arborvitae up, terribly. The other thing with arborvitae, they're prone to deer problems. Deer will browse on them when there's especially a snowy winter. Now the other one, green giant, deer rarely bother them, and they are not subject to the bagworm or periods of drought, especially after they're planted. Arborvitae in exceptionally dry summers have to be watered because even when established for 5 years, they are not drought tolerant. Not the case with the green giant western red cedar. Visual effects too are good with those. So from your point of view, and the other thing, keep in mind, they can be used as a backdrop for a shrub border, whether it be low-growing lilacs, it could be a perennial garden, it could be any number of things that you might put in front of them to give you color. And oh boy, do they work so much better than a vinyl fence. A vinyl or wooden fence is very stark and bleak against an open yard, but these are not. So they can tend to soften the landscape as well as doing their job as a windbreak and as that type of thing. Now, another thing to be aware of, the proper planting of some of these hedges, whether it would be a lilac, whether it would be the green giant, western red cedar, or arborvitae, is typically on any balled and burlap plant, which most of them are, not all of them, but most of them. The typical planting procedure would be to dig the hole 2 to 3 times larger than the root ball, and then to actually put the ball in at the right depth, and then cut off the top of the burlap. Do not remove it. Do not remove it. That's very important because you may lose the soil ball, and that will be detrimental to the growth of the plant. So simply cut the top of the root ball off with a box cutter so that water will not shed when you begin to water it. The other thing is you should add a soil amendment. It can be pre-moistened peat, or it can even be a product like sweet peat. Approximately 20 to 25% of the mixture of soil to soil amendments. The soil amendment should be about 25% in soil. This ordinary well-drained soil, nothing special, should be about 3/4 of the amount. Another thing to keep in mind is you can take and you can make strip the sod, round up the sod area, take a string, line it up, round it up, and then take that and strip the old dead sod off, and then you can make a border, plant the plants within that border, and then your mowing problem will not be a big deal because you can go up one side and down the other without any consequence. So it's quick and easy to do that. Now, watering in a balled and burlap plant in the springtime, which is a good time to plant, or even fall in September, October, as long as they are already dug, watering should be twice weekly. And in the summertime, if it turns droughty, that should be kept up, especially during a very hot, dry summer. And then you would water probably only then about once a week, just to ensure that the root system is established. After about a year, they're completely established, but actually, after about 6 weeks, the roots will grow sufficiently into the new soil so you will not be burdened by constant watering. And finally, mulch of about 2 inches deep can be spread over the whole bed, as we discussed earlier, or it can be about 2 inches deep around each tree, and that'll help preserve moisture and also keep down weeds. Now, fertilization is typically in spring and summer. So fertilization can include something like Plantone, which is very low in salts. It doesn't matter. It does not have to be an acid-loving type fertilizer or acid fertilizer, because evergreens are thought to like all acid fertilizer, but that's not necessarily true. They will do well with a Plantone, again, that's low in salts, Or you could even use a garden fertilizer like Triple 10. If you have a plant that's about 4 to 5 feet tall and it's established, you can simply take some Triple 10 in a white bucket, take the bucket and a handful of it, and throw just a handful on each side, scattering it on each side of the plant. And that will be sufficient when applied from around April 1st through April 15th, and that'll be enough. Another time to fertilize is in October. Late September, October, you can do the same thing, and that the root system will pick it up until the ground begins to freeze around December 1st. So all November, the roots begin to grow. And that's, again, if you have trouble getting water back to an area because it's so far distance, fall planting might be the thing for you. And then you can do that around the month of November. End of October, the month of November would work just fine. So again, it's spring and fall, and this can be applied to your entire landscape, whether it be with a fast release fertilizer or Plantone or Polytone, that's for acid-loving plants. Now, as far as things like boxwood, the boxwood I would recommend for a low hedge might be a plant called Wee Willie that was developed by Tree Time Nursery in Ashtabula County, Ohio. It only gets to about 30 inches tall and it stays very short. Now, it doesn't do much for windbreaks or a visual screen, but if you want to use it for around the patio or some other decorative purpose, it would work just fine. Green Mountain Boxwood is a larger growing plant, and over time, say maybe 20 years, it's more columnar. You can trim it once a year, and it'll also grow to about 6 feet after 20 years. Now, that would be more of a visual barrier. It does grow more slowly, and that would be the case. They do not like an acid fertilizer. So that would be either a neutral or a fertilizer that would be more on the slightly more on the less acid side. That would be Plantone. And again, fall and spring is the time to fertilize those plants. So with that, your hedge will thrive with few disease or insect pressures, and that's all you really have to worry about. So again, to review, depends what you want to do. Do you want a visual barrier? Do you want windbreak? Do you want a sound barrier? Typically, you're going to want an evergreen. If you're not looking for that, if you're looking something to border the property, you could just use, again, large growing lilacs, smaller growing lilacs, something like that. And also for wet areas that we did not include, for very wet areas, you could use even elderberries. And elderberries would attract birds. They will grow in ordinary well-drained soils, or they will grow in wet soils. Another one to think about is the Hikiro nishiki willow. And that's an ornamental plant that gets almost white foliage with a pink tint when it comes out earlier in the spring. It does need quite a bit of trimming, however, but it doesn't care if it's in well-drained soils or if it's in wet soils. So those are some of the things to consider, and the amount of maintenance you want to do is the other thing to consider as well. So here you have it. This is the scoop on hedges. Hope you enjoyed the program, and we'll see you with some more online seminars as we go along.